Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and take a look at how to use materials and textures in your game. So I have my scene set up here. I have a couple of planes here, and I have a cube. So we need to go ahead and import a couple of textures. So you can do that by just going into wherever you have them selected in your folder and just drag them in. So I downloaded a bunch of these textures off of cgtextures.com. I'll provide a link to it in the description, but let's take a look at a few of these textures that we're going to be using. So I have this one down here. It's called a bullethole.png. Now, a PNG file just means it's transparent. So if we have certain parts of our image that we want transparent, we're going to use a PNG file. So in this case, we just want our bullet hole to be visible. So we're going to use that one, and then we're going to go up here and select the brick rolled around it and the normal map of that brick wall. The normal map was created in a program called Crazy Bump. Now, a normal map essentially just provides a 3D realistic look to our texture without actually creating any type of geometry. So once you have all three of those selected, just drag them into your project panel. Now let's take a look at the first texture in here. In the inspector panel, we have a texture type right here, and if you open this up, you can see that there's multiple types of texture types. Texture is just the one we're going to stick with. We're not going to worry about alpha from grayscale right now. The wrap mode, we have repeat and clamp. Now repeat obviously just repeats the texture over and over on your mesh, versus clamp, which basically determines the size of the texture and just applies it to the mesh. So if your mesh is larger than the texture, then you should see, certain parts of your mesh are not going to be covered by that texture. All right, then we have the filter mode. This just basically shows you how blocky or blurry it's going to look when you get up close to the texture. So point is basically going to make it a little bit blocky once you start focusing in on the texture up close, versus the bilinear and trilinear, which are going to blur it out. Let's go ahead and select bilinear. Now the anisal level determines how good of a quality it looks when you're looking at it from an angle. So let's go ahead and adjust this up to 5. Now anisal level is good for textures that are applied to the ground or the floor. Alright, then finally we have our max size and our format. We can set the default values right here, but you can also select specific values for each platform. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and hit apply. Now there's multiple ways to create a material. The quickest way is just to drag your texture directly onto the plane, and there we go. Now you can see once we added our texture to the plane, we have a new folder in here called materials, and we have a new material under there that's the same name as the texture. So you always need a material to apply to your actual game objects in your scene here. So that was a quick way to actually create a material. Now if we look at the material, we can see we have a shader right here. It's set to diffuse. You can open this up. You can see the multiple types of shaders that we have in here. Now over here we have tiling and we have our offset. The tiling determines how much of a pattern-like effect our texture has. So right now it's pretty big, so let's go ahead and change this to say 10 by 10. And you can see that it starts making the texture much smaller. That is our tiling effect. Now the offset just makes it offset in the X or Y axis. Alright, so let's go ahead and change the shader type. We're going to use a bump diffuse. Now a bump diffuse uses a normal map. So we have our diffuse map up here, and then we have our normal map down here. So we have a normal map already. Let's go ahead and change the settings for it. We're going to change the texture type from texture down to normal map. Now by default, Unity will try to create a normal map for you. So we can undo that by unchecking this box right here. And we have the wrap mode, filter mode, anisal level, and all that. So I'm going to go ahead and hit apply. Now let's go back to our material and select our normal map. Double click. And you can tell that right now it looks pretty off. And the reason why is because it's set the tiling to 1 by 1 versus the tiling up here, which is set to 10 by 10. So if we adjust this, there we go. Now it looks good. And you can see if you focus in on the texture, it has a somewhat of a 3D look to it. So that is what a normal map does for us. It gives us a nice realistic look to our texture. Now if you change the material shader up here to a bump specular, you can see that we added a shine to our material now. So that's what the specularity does. Now you can increase the specularity over here under the shininess. You can make it less shiny or more shiny. And you can set the specular color up here as well. Alright, so that is the bump specular. Now there's a multitude of different types of shaders that we can work with in here. We're not going to take a look at all of them, but some of them we've already gone over, like the particles, additive, and additive soft. These will be used for a particle type of texture. So now let's go ahead and add our bullet hole. So we're going to focus in on this other plane now. And I'm going to go ahead and change the scale to 0.02, 0.02, 0.02. Press F to zoom in on it. And once again, just drag and drop your texture onto your plane. Now it doesn't look very good right now. This texture is obviously very, very small, so right now it's a little bit stretched. But as you can see right now, it looks like a square texture, and it's actually a PNG file, so we don't want all this extra color around our bullet hole. So we need to change the shader. And so we select transparent, and we're going to select diffuse. Now you can see all we're left with is our bullet hole. So in order for that transparent diffuse shader to work, you need to be using a PNG file. So if we select over here, you can see all we're left with is our bullet hole. Alright, so finally we're going to go ahead and create an actual material and apply it to our cube. We're going to show you how to actually add a color type of material. So right click in here, create material, and just name it as green. And to add a color, just go ahead and select all main color and select using the color picker. And now just drag and drop that material directly onto the cube. And there we go, we have a nice green material. Alright, so now you have a basic understanding of how to add textures and materials to your game objects in Unity.